Hi, my name is Ayomide. Welcome to the World Without People podcast, where we journey into some pretty amazing stories of everyday people. I believe strongly in the interconnectedness of our human experience, that we can color and enrich our lives by sharing and learning from our lived experiences. In this concise 30 minutes podcast, I bring to you engaging conversations like a chapter in a vibrant book designed to motivate and encourage and challenge and, of course, brighten your day. My guests also get to ask me one question, and there's no telling what they might come up with. So thank you for tuning in. Grab your coffee or tea or listen on the go to some amazing stories of real people. After all, what is a world without people? Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the World Without People podcast. My name is Ayomide, and I'm so excited for you to be joining me today. I have a fantastic guest, a childhood friend, actually, Juwon, who is the owner of The Glow by Juju, and she has such a unique story, and I can't wait for you to hear all that she has to share with us today. Welcome, Juwon. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. Juwon is born and bred in America, who then has lived in Nigeria for the past, how many years now? How did you move back?
This time around 5 years, but I first moved to Nigeria in 1999 and then 2012. So this is my third time back.
So we met at Home Science Association Secondary School. Shout out to Home Science. Way back in, I don't even know, 99? When did we graduate?
2002? I think.
2001.
No, you're right.
Wow.
2002. It was 2002.
Okay. You see, I don't even remember. Yeah. It's been that long, which we're like dating ourselves right now, but you know.
Doesn't matter. We look like dating.
I know. We met when you came in SS1. And it's funny because you have a Nigerian name, but you still, even till day, look American, talk American. And so why did you move to Nigeria?
Okay, so my parents moved to Florida, in 1979. And my dad moved back in 1989. So my mom and dad did long distance for about 10 years. And I think it just got to the point where my mom was like, what are we doing? So there's five of us, and the two oldest were already of age, but the last three of us were not. And so my mom told us, we're moving to Nigeria. We're going to move and stay with your father. Pack your bags. We'll be leaving at the end of the summer. And that's what we did. So my mom moved us from Miami in 1999. I think she just wanted us to have the experience of living it with both parents. I think she missed my dad, and I think she was tired of doing everything by herself. So I'm actually happy that she did that.
Well, I mean, I understand it from your parents' perspective, but from your perspective, what was the culture shock like? Had you been to Nigeria before that?
Yes. So before that, from the age of 3, I was 3, my siblings were different ages. We would be in Nigeria for like 5 to 6 months out of the year. So typically what would end up happening is my mom would take us out of school early and then we would resume late. And so we did that for most of my like elementary, primary school education. But around the time, like I believe 1996, we didn't go to Nigeria at all for about 2 to 3 years. And I think it was because of some of the unrest that was happening. And I remember my dad came and he actually stayed with us for a while. Like we were all in Florida together. But yeah, by the time 1999 rolled around, my mom said we were moving. And I'm going to be honest, not everybody was happy, but I was thrilled. I was so
Why were you
excited.
Thrilled?
I did not like going to school in Miami. I just remember not feeling like I fit in really. And I just remember being like, thank God. I wasn't really social at my old school. Like I had friends, but I wasn't really social. I wasn't involved. I didn't like my school. I mean, I was just ready. I don't know. And I always loved going to Nigeria. I always had happy memories associated with Nigeria. So I was like, yeah, let's do this. I remember packing my bags months before we left. Until this day, I still do that when I'm excited.
I was going to ask that, like, what was the difference? Did you miss your friends?
I remember having a friend I used to write from Nigeria. I'm like, oh, this is what's happening. Or, oh my gosh, at this school, you have to wear a uniform. But I just don't know why I didn't have the attachment. It was really hard for my sister. She was like very involved in school. So the adjustment for her was difficult, but I really don't know what it was. But I just know that I was good with leaving. I was like, bye, deuces.
Yeah, because I was going to say that I don't remember you having a hard time adjusting and meeting with us in high school. And so, what do you think made that transition easier here, even though you hadn't been to school here?
You know what I will say? And I'm going off of a journal entry from when I was a kid. It was the first time I wasn't a minority, and that was huge for me because before that, typically I was the only Black kid in my class. And I think there was something about no one making fun of my gap because, I have a gap in the front, no one's making fun of my name. My name's not weird. It wasn't even a matter of, it was just nothing was weird about me. I was in a room full of people who, even though we all looked different, we were all the same. Our names were similarly different compared to like the Mollys and the Elizabeths and the Dianas that I went to school with. And I think that sense of community, I felt very much at home and I felt like I belonged. And that really meant a lot to me. But I do remember writing about that, being like, like I look like everybody else. My body's not weird here. I'm not like too big or too small. Like I'm just normal here. I mean, not to say things weren't hard, and there were definitely adjustments and some traumatizing things definitely happened. But for the most part, like the sense of community I felt was really nice. I will say that.
So, what was the most traumatic thing that happened?
Moving from Miami, we weren't even living on the island. And for those who are Nigerian and who have lived here, there's kind of like a difference. There's a difference between living in an area of Lagos State where you can still get pizza, you can still go to the cinema and watch a movie. Where we were living was very undeveloped compared to other areas of Lagos. So it was a huge culture shock. We didn't have a generator at the time. So yeah, we really got thrown into the deep end. But I would say for me, because I had my siblings and I had my parents and we kind of like were all in it together, I don't really consider that traumatic. It was an experience for sure.
And I'm going to actually name another thing that was an adjustment, but in a good way. My dad being around was a huge adjustment for the three of us because he really wasn't around much. He would visit, he would come with presents. Like, we basically got whatever we wanted when he was visiting in Florida. Then fast forward to us actually living with him. The man was strict and he was very interested. Well, how was school? Who's your friends? I'm picking you up. Like, can we go to a party? No. Can we do this? No. That was a nice change, having him be like a dad. So that was an adjustment as well. But I think about him being there and having him day in, day out very fondly because up until then, he was like a part-time dad.
What was really traumatizing for me that I didn't even really process until later is the treatment from the teachers.
Some of the situations that occurred were incredibly traumatic. My first day of school, there was a teacher who pulled me out of my seat by my hair because I had braids in my hair. And she's like, I don't want to see you with these in your hair again. Okay, fine. Welcome to home science. And I remember I still to this day do not like this man. I will probably never really fully like him because of the stuff I went through with him. But I remember first day of school, I had pants on and I remember him stopping me and my sister and saying, you can't wear trousers. You're females. And we laughed, or maybe I laughed. That was probably not a good idea, but I thought he was joking. And I just remember having issues with him for the rest of my time. But I will say the most disturbing thing that happened, and this has really, really affected me, and I actually have written about it. I had a teacher, my first year there, take me to a science lab. He proceeded 2 to 3 hours to have me mark parts in the Bible that basically explained why I was going to hell. And I still think about that, and I'm like, what on earth? But that was probably the most disturbing thing that happened because he basically called me a slut, told me that the reason why I was in Nigeria is because my father was ashamed of me. I mean, basically created a narrative in his head that was very far from the truth and basically used the Bible to support reasons why I was going to burn in hell. I had some other incidents like in my senior year with teachers, but that really left an impression on me. I remember having a lot of guilt for a long time, thinking I must have done something wrong or I wasn't a good enough Christian because of that. So thank you very much to that dude.
Did you talk to anybody?
No, I didn't tell anybody for a long time. I went home. I prayed to God to not send me to hell. And my prayer point for the next 3 years was that God would forgive me for any sins I was committing, aware or unaware, and that he would make me better, purer, so that I would not disgrace my family.
I wish you could see my face right now. I'm so sorry on behalf of all Christians because that's not what we're supposed to do. And I'm sorry for the child that you were because no teacher, no adult should do that to anyone. Oh my gosh.
You know, I completely agree and I appreciate you so much. And, you know, it was a very eye-opening experience and it really taught me a lot between someone who weaponizes religion and someone who's walking in faith. So it was a good learning experience for me at the end of the day. But yeah, it definitely left an impression on me. It definitely is something that I carried with me for a long time. I mean, you know, thankfully, thank God that time has a way of healing.
I mean, shout out to you for being that resilient. That is a level of resiliency in a teenager that I don't think I hear often enough.
Thank you for saying that, but I don't feel like I even had it bad. Like, I honestly don't even think that was bad. I've heard things that other people went through that was so much worse. I know people that went to school with us that experienced similar things. I do believe Nigeria is a very patriarchal society, and I do believe that this society, the way it's set up, doesn't always think about women and girls and protecting them. And also, I mean, I know this is such a buzzy word now, but I do believe that this is a very toxic, masculine place, and I think very unhealthy. So those were the things that were very eye-opening for me. And like, those are the things about my going to school here, especially coming from a very liberal school in a very liberal environment. Going from that to much more conservative school was an experience for sure.
I don't feel like we were in the same school, but we're going to move on from secondary school. So you then finished and you go back to the States to study English. And I forgot to say that Juwon is also an excellent writer. But yes, you went back to college. And how was that experience like? Was it easier to have friends and relate to people?
I actually was very depressed when I left Nigeria. My parents thought I was too young to start uni because, you know, in Nigeria, your age doesn't really determine when you'll finish. I finished at 15. And so I took a year off before my parents decided that, you know what, she's ready. I didn't want to go. And I had a very hard time adjusting. I would say my first 2 to 3 years were really bad. I remember I used to send emails to you guys like, oh, everything, I hate it here. And I remember Toy sent me an email and she's like, do you know how lucky you are? You're complaining. She's like, I don't want to hear it. And she basically told me to suck it up. And it really did change my mindset. And so I really tried harder to acclimate, but it was hard. I didn't really have a lot of friends when I first moved back. I hated it. I hated the food. I didn't like the people. People thought I was a lesbian. College was you know, I did what I needed to do. I got my degree. I made a couple of friends towards my last few years there. But, you know, to all the awkward kids out there, just wait. You'll find people you really gel with.
I think it's important that you say that, right? And that's part of why we're having this conversation. Because when you're in your 20s or teens, you think you're going to get it together. And hey, sometimes you don't actually get it together into your 30s or whenever. That's why I commend you on being so resilient. I can't imagine how many people have gone into full-time depression or even worse, having gone through just half of what you've gone through. And so then you moved to New York, and when you moved to New York, you moved there as a writer, right? Like, I remember that was what you were doing before you started The Globe.
I moved there as a writer. I was fresh out of college and I had one internship under my belt, and I had already been told you're not the right fit for magazine editorial, but I was really lucky that I had a mentor who thought I was worth investing in, and so she hired me, and she put me through the ringer, but it completely changed my life. And from there, I worked from one magazine to the other, and, you know, I was able to create a career for myself, and I did that for a few years before going back to Nigeria. So
what were some of the magazines? I remember one being Harper's Bazaar.
I started off with an online mag, and that was my mentor's magazine. And then from there, I worked at Harper's Bazaar, and then I worked at Self Magazine. I worked at Essence Magazine, and I worked at AOL during that time as well, and online magazines. And then, so I was kind of bouncing around. I typically used to work for their special issues. So Harper's Bazaar was my first official magazine job. But then after that, I would be hired to work on a special issue, like the Best of What's New issue for Popular Science magazine, or the beauty issue for Self magazine, or, and so I'd be hired to kind of spearhead that and make sure everything's running smoothly and contact the different brands. And yeah, it was a very interesting time. But let me tell you this right now, not nearly as glamorous as The Devil Wears Prada makes it seem. It was not glamorous. I had this idea in my head, not from the film. There's a journalist, I'm such a fan of hers, a Nigerian woman, Lola Gunake. She interviewed Kanye West for the New York Times, I believe. And from there, I actually discovered the blog of her friend, Tia Williams. And Tia Williams at the time was the beauty editor for Elle magazine, I believe. And a Black woman, I was obsessed. I was like, oh my goodness, there's a Black woman who has a job like this. And I just decided I have to do exactly what she's doing. And, I obviously, with her beauty blog and her talking about her life and what she does and what she gets to write about, I didn't know about the other parts of it. And there's parts of it that aren't glamorous. Like, for one, the pay is terrible. And so I would be at Fashion Week and I would only have $10 in my account. And I was basically hungry all the time. But I actually also babysat. So I was working, I would be at like the Condé Nast building and I'm watching Anna Wintour walk past me. And then I would go to my other job and I would be babysitting. Or I also worked at, I did retail. I did all types of jobs during that time, just to have enough money to pay for rent. So that was the glamorous magazine years.
On the one hand, anybody that hears that you've worked with these magazines and you're in the same building with Anna Wintour, to them, that sounds like you're living the life.
If you love it, it's worth it and very rewarding. I found out very early I was not a fashion girl. And so I left. I didn't work in fashion anymore. I stayed in beauty because I preferred it. I thought it was more democratic, less elitist, but it's definitely a hard industry. And at the time when I was in it, there weren't a lot of women of color at all. And so there would often be a cap as to how far you could go. But I'm happy to see that that's very different now. And I'm seeing so many amazing women doing their thing. And it's really exciting to see where the fashion industry is and where the beauty industry is and how inclusive it is now. So, that's really encouraging.
Was that then when you made your move back to Nigeria, leaving the fashion industry? Because then you come to Nigeria and you're doing beauty, which is totally still even a unique thing to be doing in Nigeria. I see a lot of people doing it now, but it's not necessarily one of those things where tech is blooming.
So basically, I'm going to give you the short version so I don't keep you here forever. 2012, I'm still working in magazine editorial in beauty. And I had planned to come home for a little bit just to take a bit of a break because I was getting burnt out working so much. I was working retail and working for the magazine. My dad was sick. I didn't realize how bad it was at the time. And then I saw how tired my mom was. And I just remember asking her, how bad is it? And she told me it was bad. So that's why I ended up staying in 2012. And, unfortunately, my dad did pass away that year. So I'm really happy I stayed because I got some wonderful time with him, even though he was sick for most of it. I just am really grateful I got that time because I know I would have been very upset if I hadn't been around or if I didn't get to spend that time with him. But yeah, so once that happened, there was someone that I had worked with at Essence magazine and we reconnected in Nigeria. She ended up being offered the editor-in-chief position for a magazine that was launching. And she was like, you live in Nigeria, right? I was like, yeah, I've been here for a little over a year. She's like, oh, well, I'm going to hire her. And she hired me. And so I was thinking, yeah, okay, great. This is what I'm going to do here. And my plan was to be in Nigeria. I had my little apartment and I was basically kind of putting roots down, or what I thought were roots. But unfortunately, my brother-in-law passed away very suddenly. So I ended up moving back to the States, and I was in the States from 2014 until 2018 when I moved back this time. So the reason why I got into aesthetics, which is still the beauty industry, but I'm doing something a little different, is because when my dad was sick, I used to rub his head and his face. I didn't know what I was doing, but it seemed to help distract him from the pain. And when my brother-in-law passed away, it was really hard on my sister. Of course, it would be hard on anyone. And she was pregnant at the time. I would rub her, touch her face and just help her, it would help her sleep. And I had been with my sister for almost 2 years. I had taken that time away from working and I was just with her. I didn't really want to go back to magazine editorial. I felt kind of just I didn't want to write about the same stuff I had been writing about. I was kind of over it. And I just wanted to do something that made me feel like I was helping people in my own way. I know what beauty has done in my life, and not in like the obvious way. I mean, yeah, makeup is great and stuff, but just the confidence to be able to decide how you want to present yourself to the world. A lot of people don't remember that I had really bad acne growing up, and there were things that I always struggled with my skin. So I always had an interest in skincare, and obviously being in the beauty industry, I learned a lot, and I always loved getting all the products and going home and testing them. So I knew I wanted to stay in that industry. And so, yeah, I decided, you know what, I'm going to learn about facial massage, and I'm going to learn about skincare. And so I went back to school for that, and that's how I ended up in aesthetics. That's how I ended up kind of shifting gears a little bit and doing beauty from that end of the industry.
That's awesome. And again, thank you so much for sharing your story. And, I know those were difficult times. I actually even can't believe it's been 10, 11 years since you lost your dad. And again, so sorry for your loss. All right. So then you move back and then you move back a vegan.
Here's the thing, guys. So when I moved back to America after secondary school, I got sick. Like I could not, it wasn't one thing, it was a bunch of things. But the most disturbing thing was that I was getting migraines. My whole body just felt like it was unhappy. And so long story short, I was taking a nutrition course because I've always been fascinated with nutrition and the way it affects the body. My teacher recommended I quit dairy. She was just like, why don't you just try cutting dairy out? The difference was night and day. I stopped getting migraines almost immediately. So from there, I bought some books on veganism, and that was it. So that was like, I went vegan, like serious vegan in, I think like the late 2000s. And, I would have my occasional like pizza here and there, but I was strictly no meat, no chicken. So by the time I moved to Nigeria, yes, I was fully in it. And it wasn't ethical, even though I respect ethical vegans. My mother owns a poultry farm, full disclosure. Sunday dinner comes around, I'm cooking the chicken, I'm cooking the meat, whatever she wants to eat. So it wasn't about that. But for me, for my health personally, veganism has been a game changer. The things that were always an issue for me just corrected itself. So that is why I was like hardcore vegan for a long time, always trying to veganize recipes. And being a vegan in Nigeria, just to let you know, was harder in 2012, but in a lot of ways it was easier because back then there weren't that many options and I kept it really plant-based. I ate a lot of beans, I ate egusi, and I ate lots of fruits and vegetables. So that's basically how I was doing it. And now these days being vegan is easy here. It really is. Tofu, soy milk, almond milk, oat milk, rice milk, coconut milk, tiger nut milk, cheese. They even have vegan cheese down the street. Granted, I live in an area where there's more stuff available, but even online now, they have so many vegan options online. It gets trickier if you're a specific type of vegan, but they have options now. So it's a lot easier now.
But you're no longer a vegan?
I am no longer a vegan. Here's the thing. It's been actually a year now. I have been weightlifting. Who would have thought? I don't like to sweat, but I'm getting older and my body was like, what are you doing? Our back hurt. So I basically decided once my wrist started hurting because of work, I was like, I need to get stronger. So I started working out. I started lifting weights. And the reason why I'm no longer vegan is just because I have not figured out how to get enough protein through veganism. So I eat dairy now, which funny enough, dairy in Nigeria does not affect me the way dairy does in the States. I don't break out. I don't have stomach aches. I don't get migraines. So I eat like Greek yogurt. I eat eggs, not often, because if I have tofu, I don't really need the eggs. And I eat fish, but not really. I would say like 10%, but I have given up veganism for now. I still am team vegan. I think it's one of the best things you can do for your body, but everybody is different. Disclaimer. Do you like whatever makes your body feel best? Everybody's different.
Let me ask at least something that I think people would want to hear, which is how has dating been like for you in Nigeria versus in the States?
Okay, buckle up. It's been a ride. So here's the thing. I've dated a lot of Nigerian men in the States. So I've experienced it on both ends. I've dated men who aren't Nigerian as well. I've dated pretty much every type of man in terms of race. One thing I will say about dating here in Lagos specifically is that options are limited in every way. I mean that in terms of activities. I mean that in terms of options. I mean that in terms of quality of person. But I'm going to be honest, because I have a lot of love for Nigerian men specifically. That's why if I hear someone like trash talk a Nigerian man, I'm like, wait, like, let's not generalize. With that said, I do think that if you're someone who has had the opportunity to travel, you're going to think about things differently than someone who hasn't. That's just a fact. It doesn't even only apply to dating. If you have seen different things, you've experienced different things, you're going to see the world differently. That can be tricky here when the amount of people who may have similar experiences or similar outlook on things may not be available to you. So that's one problem. Another problem is culturally. I have found that things that I just have no tolerance for at all are very much accepted here. And that's been an adjustment. I've just had to really remove myself from a lot of situations that just won't work. You know, in some ways, I would say people here are more progressive with their outlook on dating. I guess for me, I'm a little bit more traditional, or let me not say traditional, old fashioned. I'm not sharing anything. I don't even like sharing my food. I have found that that's very much normalized. I remember there was someone here who wanted to take me out, and he's a whole married man. So let's get into it, you know? And he's like, oh, if you think, I'm going to say exactly what he said to me. If you think you're going to find a good man that's not married in this Nigeria, you're fooling yourself. All the good ones are taken. I was like, that is the saddest thing I've ever heard. And I remember just saying, we got to do better. If we're not accepting this, people aren't going to be emboldened to move like that. But that's been my biggest shock dating here. It's just the comfort people have dating each other when they're in other relationships. That's been my personal experience. Another thing that I'll use my ex as an example, great guy, but I have found that, you know, how do I say this diplomatically? So, you know, women and men who are of the age where they're ready to settle down. We've got to get into like some kind of mental health work in terms of dealing with stress, in terms of, you know, confronting issues we may have with our families and how that has affected us, because it's really causing issues in relationships.
Therapy.
There you go. You said it. Therapy. I'm a big fan of therapy. I've been to therapy before. Love my therapist, more than one. And I've also done other types of inner child work and self-care and other modalities, as they call it, of therapy. So it doesn't necessarily have to be Western. And also living here is very traumatic. You know, there's a lot of stuff that people who live here go through that they never really deal with. And it unfortunately affects their relationships. But aside from that, dating here has been fine, you know, but it is different than dating in the States. I miss feeling comfortable enough to just meet up with someone for a coffee or meeting up with someone for like a cocktail. I'm very careful about where I go and who I interact with, because if something does happen, I don't have the assurance that I'll be protected. I don't have the assurance that I can go to the police and they'll act in my interest as a victim if I am victimized. So I'm very careful with who I hang out with and, you know, and who I date and talk to, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, I know a lot of people who are dating here and they love it. And I love that for them.
I hear that a lot. Like people tell me if you're in Nigeria, you'll be married by now. But then I also hear, like you said, people tell me like, oh, you're not going to meet a Nigerian man who doesn't cheat.
I don't like that, not even as a woman, but as someone who is a fan of men. You know, I don't hate men. Don't you want better? So you're basically saying that men don't have the self-control to be faithful, and I think that's lazy. Let's expect more. Men are capable of more. Men are capable of having self-control, just like women are. I hate that for men, and I hate that for women. This idea that like, oh, well, this is just the way it is. It's always been like this. This is cultural. I'll never forget someone saying that. This is cultural. Monogamy is an Oyinbo thing. Men here have always had more than one wife. And yeah, well, we also used to kill twins. It takes time to build a relationship, and isn't that kind of cool? You know, to have this relationship that you nurtured and, you know, homie, your lover, your friend, like, you know, and you built with this person. And part of that has to be loyalty, in my opinion, and has to be commitment and monogamy. I do think there's a freedom, because I don't think someone is capable of truly feeling safe if they feel like they're having to share you and knowing that they're giving you parts of themselves and you're exposing them to things. You want someone to be your partner in life and be there for you and support you, but you're not even giving teaching them the basic courtesy of making sure they're safe and feel safe with you. If a
Right.
woman feels safe, you really get to enjoy her. I have a few clients, they're a married couple. And when I tell you that they give me so much hope. I love watching them together. I love the respect they have for each other. And I don't live with them. I don't know their ins and outs. They seem to have like broken the cycle or like cracked the code of being a happily married couple here. Not to say like life's perfect and they don't go through their issues. I'm sure they do. But I remember asking them like, okay, tell me, what's the secret? Like, how are you guys in this Nigeria, as stressful as it can be? And they both said separately, because I usually give her facial first and then I give him his facial. And she was like, oh, well, we're friends. So that helps. We like each other. And later on when I'm asking him, he's like, well, do whatever she says. And then he's like, no, I'm joking. We're friends. He's like, I like her. He's like, I love her, of course, but I like her. I value her opinion. She's cool. She's fun, and he's like, and when things are bumpy, that's what carries you through. And I just thought that was lovely, honestly. And I love them. I think they're great.
I do agree. I'm very passionate about this idea of dating a friend. I've always said that I'm probably likely going to end up with someone I already know. Like, I've met them already. We were friends at some point, but we lost touch because of distance or whatever. But because we once had that relationship, that friendship is going to be easy and, on and popping, because I can't imagine being with someone I don't like. And it's funny because I feel like it's the friends that be ghosting you.
It's frustrating. And I feel like this is going to be a little mean. Well, I'm not mean. I truly feel this way. So forgive me if I offend anyone. I say this all the time. I'm like, I just feel like women have evolved faster than men in terms of emotionally intelligent. I hear this all the time from my clients talking about my generation, and they're like, you guys don't try. You guys just throw in the towel. Like, when we were younger, we stayed with our husbands. That's why we're still married. It wasn't always easy. But I think it's kind of like what you said. Like, you would never ghost your friend. You would never ghost your partner. And I feel like women specifically is that we're in it. We're like 10 toes down, ride or die. I hate that saying. I don't know if they just haven't caught up yet, or if they just don't think like that, or if they think like, what's wrong with 50% and we want 100? It just means that like they don't know what life looks like at 100. They're incapable of giving us that 100. Not necessarily their fault, but doesn't mean that we have to settle for less.
And you've talked a lot about your clients. How has that been being a business owner in Nigeria, especially in beauty, and yours being a home-based service? What is your experience been like?
Positive. I feel very lucky. Now, not to say it wasn't hard. I've been at this since 2018, and the first 2 years were horrible. And I don't think it was necessarily a matter of it being anyone's fault per se. I think what I do is very different from what a lot of people do here, and my approach is different. I was trained differently. I was really lucky to get an education on the East Coast and on the West Coast, and I've kind of meshed the two together. But I could not get clients when I first started. And then on top of that, a lot of my clients wouldn't pay. I was on the mainland at the time. So I had a lot of situations where I'm doing a service that was easily worth like 40K in terms of just what I was using, in terms of the products I was using and the tools. And I would have clients trying to haggle the 8K I was charging. But I will say that like I learned a lot. And now I feel like I have clients that seek me out because they're looking for what I provide. There are other estheticians and medical estheticians and dermatologists offering other facial services, and they're great. And, I often recommend a client who may be new who comes to me like, oh, you know what, I don't think we're a good fit. But the clients I have are perfect for me and I'm perfect for them, and it works really well. And it's been really good because of that. So if you are trying to start a business here, don't be discouraged, because I was told to offer like bleaching creams. I don't sell my own products. I don't make my own products. I was told to, offer filler and Botox because that's what people want. I was told that no one cares about microcurrent, which is one of my most popular services, and no one cares about facial massage, which is what I specialize in. But you will find your people, and that's with everything in life. And it took time. I found my people, and I'm really happy. I don't have a franchise. It's a very niche market with what I do, and most of my clients do have me come to their homes, and I do have like a little studio, but nothing big, and it works, so, and as long as you're happy doing it, that's what matters, and as long as it pays the bills, that's what matters. But it is definitely a matter of finding your people and finding people who want what you offer. And that's been my experience with business here. It's been hard, but it's going well.
And I love that. I love the idea of it being niche. I love the idea of it being, unique and being able to just finally find your own people. And so I'm guessing word of mouth is really the best way to kind of get business in Nigeria for that kind of service.
I would say yes, because God knows I'm terrible with promotion and I'm not good with social media, but I got really lucky and I was trucking along. I would cold message people. I remember that. I actually have to give myself that. I did message people that I knew when I worked at, what was it called? Complete Fashion. Yeah. And so there were people I had interviewed in the past who were like personalities and, like presenters. And I messaged them like, hey, I'm doing this now. Would you like a facial for free? There were a couple of people who were like, oh, hey, long time. Are you back in Nigeria? Yeah, come through. Like, you can give me a free facial? Sure. And I did. One of them, and she was the first person that really made a difference in my career. She was like, you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I don't care about skincare that much. I'm going to just cover it with makeup and keep it moving. But you need to reach out to the aunties. The aunties are the ones with money. So she connected me. And till this day, this is one of my clients. I love this woman. She's like a big sister to me. And the one who said, yeah, I'm not going to be using you, she posted me on social media. She did that for me. And there was someone I had known back in my New York days. She had a facial when I was in New York. And she mentioned, oh yeah, like there's someone who gave me a facial when I lived in New York and she's in Nigeria. And that was a big game changer for me because word of mouth got out. One person got a facial, recommended me to someone else because this was during the height of COVID. Spas were closed and they knew I was licensed and they felt comfortable with me in their homes. And I was able to go to their homes masked up, sanitized everything, give them their facial. And that's kind of how it picked up for me. But it was definitely word of mouth for sure. And I'm thankful to everybody who recommended me. If you do good work, it's going to work out for you. Just keep on trucking. Just keep it going because I was told to quit quite a few times. My mother was like, I'm worried. Maybe you should go back to New York. How are you going to afford this? But I know if nothing else, I know I'm good at my job. I put a lot of time into making sure I'm good at my job and keeping up with the trends. And if you're good at what you do here, I'm not saying opportunity doesn't help, but you will be employed. It may not pop off immediately. You may not be the most popular, but who cares? If you can pay your bills, that's all that matters. And that was the case for me, for sure.
I'm so glad to hear that because I think sometimes you just need, like you said, the one person who's a champion, the one person who's like, I'm going to take it upon myself to share your stuff. I'm going to take it upon myself to invite people to whatever it is you're doing. And I think that's very important. This has just been a delightful conversation, Juwon. Just learning a little bit more about you. And again, the word that keeps coming to mind is resilience, how resilient you've been in handling change and finding your own place and people. You do get to ask me one question about anything.
So my question for you is, do you see yourself moving back here?
So the short answer is yes. I love it here. I wish I'd moved as soon as I graduated. If I'd done that, I think it would have been better. It's not, I wouldn't say difficult, but the delay, it's been 18 years. It's a little tricky now to kind of really figure out what that is. But it's not like I have any ties apart from really great friends. So I could move tomorrow. My focus right now is my career and I'm just trying to make sure that that's really established. Or maybe the podcast will blow up and it could be my full-time gig and I can do it in Nigeria, so I'm hopeful.
It's good to have that soft space. We're really lucky we have that, So come back. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you so much, Juwon. You can find Juwon at the Glow by Juju on Instagram. That is TheGlowByJuju.
That's where I'll be. You can send me a message. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me in today's episode. Just like you'll tell someone about a great book you read, please don't forget to share this if you enjoyed it. Connect on IG and Twitter at TWWPcast and get details on the website at worldwithoutpeople.org. And hey, remember to make loving others the story of your life. Until next time, this is The World Without People.